My family threw me away for choosing my own path. For a while, they thought they'd won. They stood on their pedestal of wealth and influence, looking down at me with that familiar mix of pity and disgust. But they forgot about the one secret. I knew the one that could unravel their perfect lives and bring their entire world crashing down. They always taught me that legacy was everything. They were right. But the legacy I was about to give them wasn't the one they'd spent their lives building. It was the one they deserved. This is how I did it. To really get the end, you have to understand the beginning. You have to picture the world I grew up in. It's my family. The Harrisons weren't just rich. They were a local institution. The Harrison name was carved onto hospital wings, university libraries, and the glossy programs of every important charity gala in the city. We were the picture of old money, of quiet dignity and unshakable public service. Our family motto, framed in my father's mahogany-paneled office, was legacy, integrity, community. It was a beautiful, carefully constructed, soul-crushing lie. From the outside, we looked perfect. My father, Richard Harrison, was the stoic patriarch, a real estate titan who had inherited an empire and tripled it. He spoke in measured tones, and his words carried the weight of his checkbook. He was respected, admired, and feared. My mother, Eleanor, was his perfect partner in crime. She was the social architect of our family's reputation, the kind of woman who could chair a fundraiser for orphans in the afternoon and gut a rival's reputation with a quiet word at a cocktail party that evening. Her whole life was a performance of effortless grace and razor-sharp social maneuvering. Then there was my brother, Julian, the heir apparent, the golden boy. 2 years older than me, he was born to follow in my father's footsteps. He had the right look, the right handshake, the right easy charm that put everyone at ease. He went to the right schools, majored in business, and was a perfect copy of my father, just with newer wrapping paper. He was the future, and then there was me, Amelia, the second-born, the daughter, the artist, in a family that worshipped stock, portfolios, and board memberships. I was an anomaly. I didn't care about the market. I cared about how light fell across a canvas. I didn't want to network. I wanted to read. It was clear from a young age that I just didn't fit. While Julian learned how to read a balance sheet, I was hiding in the attic, sketching the world outside my window. My family didn't see this as a difference, but a defect. My passion for art was treated like a cute but useless hobby. It's a fine pastime, Amelia, my father would say, but you can't build a legacy on charcoal and paint. The tension was usually quiet. It was in the silences, in the way my father's eyes would glaze over when I showed him a new piece. It was in my mother's gentle but firm pushes for me to join the junior league or some suitable committee. It was in the condescending way Julian would ruffle my hair and call my art cute. They weren't just indifferent. They were actively trying to sand down my edges to mold me into a shape that fit their family portrait. I was supposed to be the artistic daughter, a quaint accessory who would eventually marry well. My own dreams were completely irrelevant. My life became a series of small surrenders. I went to the fundraisers, wore the designer dresses, and smiled for the society photographers. But I held on to my art like a secret lifeline. It was the only place I could really be myself. The only place the Harrison name meant nothing. Pressure got worse as I got older. They expected me to go to a respectable college, major in something practical like art history, and then come home to take my place. The idea of me pursuing art as a career was so ridiculous to them it was never even discussed. It was a joke. But I was serious, and that was a problem they weren't ready for. The moment the quiet Cold War turned hot wasn't some dramatic explosion. It came in a plain manila envelope. Inside was a letter I knew would change my life. A full-ride scholarship to a world-renowned arts college on the West Coast, a place I'd only dreamed of. It wasn't my parents' money. It wasn't the Harrison name opening a door. It was mine. It was proof that every hour I'd spent alone in my room, every sacrifice I'd made, mattered. It was proof I was good, I remember floating down the stairs, clutching that letter like a sacred text. I found them in the formal living room for their usual pre-dinner drinks. Father swirling his scotch, Mother sipping her sherry, Julian scrolling through stocks on his phone. "I have some news," I said, my voice shaking with excitement. My mother offered her placid, polite smile. "Did you hear back from the City Museum about volunteering?" "No," I said, my own smile not faltering. "Better, I've been offered a full-ride scholarship to study studio art." The silence that followed was so heavy it was almost deafening. My father slowly set his glass down, the sound echoing in the room. Julian finally looked up from his phone, something unreadable in his eyes. My mother's smile froze on her face. My father spoke first, his voice dangerously calm. "You applied to an art school? It's one of the best in the country," I said, my voice getting smaller. "This is everything I've ever wanted." "What you've wanted?" he scoffed, the calm cracking. "Amelia, we've discussed this. Shh, your life isn't a whim. It's a responsibility. You have a duty to this family. My duty is to be a placeholder." Shot back, years of suppressed anger suddenly boiling over. "To be the artistic daughter on your arm at parties? This is my chance to build something for myself on my own merit." Merit. My mother's voice was pure ice. "What merit is there in being poor and obscure? What kind of life is that? We've given you everything, and you want to throw it all away to go play with paint on the other side of the country." It all blew up. Years of resentment crammed into 10 brutal minutes. And Julian, he just watched, a silent spectator at my execution. He never defended me, never said a word. His silence was its own betrayal, confirming he stood with them. Finally, my father stood up, his face a thundercloud. He gave me the ultimatum. "You will decline this ridiculous offer. You will enroll in the state university's business program, and you will accept the internship I have already arranged for you. That is your future. Or you can choose this fantasy. But if you do, you are no longer a Harrison. You will be cut off. No money, no contact, no inheritance. You will be completely on your own." He expected me to break. He thought his money and power could control me just like they always had. I looked at his face, at my mother's cold disapproval, and at my brother's smug indifference, and I realized they didn't love me. They loved the idea of me, the one that fit into their perfect picture. The real me was an inconvenience. My voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. "Fine." The word just hung in the air. "Fine," my father repeated. Stunned. Double quotes, "Fine," I said again, feeling a strange sense of calm. "I'll take the scholarship." I walked out, went upstairs, and started packing. I didn't cry. The pain was a hollow ache in my chest, too deep for tears. They didn't come after me. The next morning, I came downstairs with 2 suitcases to a silent house. A check for $1,000 was on the hall table with a note in my mother's perfect script. Final. I walked out the front door and didn't look back. I was 18, years old and terrifyingly alone. They had cast me out. They thought they'd won. The first few years were rough. That $1,000 vanished in a week, gone to a flight and a deposit on a tiny, rundown apartment. I worked 3 jobs to get through: school waitress, barista, and cleaning the campus art studios. I was always exhausted, living on instant noodles and caffeine. Some nights I'd just sit in my cold apartment, my hands aching and smelling of turpentine, and the loneliness was a physical weight. I missed the comfort, if not the love. I missed the illusion of having a family. Meanwhile, my family pretended I didn't exist. They just erased me. Family friends who asked about me got a curt, "Amelia is pursuing her own interests." A social death sentence. I'd see them in magazines, smiling at galas, cutting ribbons. The Harrison dynasty marched on, their perfect image untouched. Julian was now a vice president at my father's company. his face grinning out from business journals. They were thriving. I was surviving. And the injustice of it all just festered. But I was also growing. Hardship was forging me into my own person. My art got better, deeper, more honest, fueled by the pain. And I was learning new skills. My major wasn't just painting. It included digital art and archival restoration. I learned about data recovery, encryption, how to uncover what's hidden. I got fascinated with digital ghosts, the traces we all leave behind. It was a skill my family would have found useless, would turn out to be their undoing. The key was on a small, forgotten hard drive. In a box of old art supplies, I'd almost tossed it a dozen times. It was from the summer I was 16 when I was forced into an internship at Harrison Holdings to learn what a real job was. Since I was the family disappointment, they gave me grunt work, digitizing decades of old paper records in the basement. Archives, scan, save, repeat. It was mind-numbing, but I was observant and bored. I noticed a heavily encrypted partition on the main server labeled HHF Harrison Holdings Foundation, the family's charitable crown jewel, the thing that laundered their reputation. My father had explicitly told it that I wasn't to have access to anything sensitive, but my temporary low-level login had accidentally been given broader read-only permissions than they knew. I couldn't change anything, but I could see the files, and I could copy them. On my last day, driven by a teenage curiosity I didn't understand, that's what I did. I plugged in a small portable drive and copied the entire encrypted HHF partition. It took hours. Hid the drive in my backpack and forgot all about it. Small, secret act of rebellion. Years later, I found that drive. As the bitterness over being cast out settled deep in my bones, I started thinking about it. What was so important it needed that level of encryption? This wasn't just corporate security. This was something else. Fueled by anger, grief, and my new technical skills, I decided to crack it. It became my obsession. By day, I was an art student. By night, I was a digital archaeologist digging up my family's secrets. It took me the better part of a year, teaching myself cryptography from online forums and textbooks, running brute force attacks that went nowhere. The encryption was professional, layered, nearly impossible to break. So many times, I almost gave up. I'd hit another wall and the hopelessness would wash over me. What was I even doing? Just torturing myself? Then I'd see a photo of them online, looking happy and whole. And the rage would come roaring back, and I'd get back to my keyboard. The breakthrough came on a rainy Tuesday night. I was trying a new algorithm. I ran the program and went to make coffee, not expecting anything. When I came back, the progress bar was gone. In its place was an open file directory. My heart stopped. I just stared. I clicked on the first folder, then the next. And my world fell away. It wasn't just a second set of books. It was a detailed blueprint of a massive, decade-long criminal enterprise. Spreadsheets, scanned documents, password protected. Emails, it was all there. Meticulous record of their staggering hypocrisy. My father's company systematically overbilled its largest clients with bogus fees. The excess funds, millions a year, weren't booked as profit. They were funneled as anonymous corporate donations to the Harrison Holdings Foundation. From there, the money was laundered. The foundation, with my mother as head of the grants committee, would award huge charitable grants to shell corporations with noble-sounding names like the Urban Arts Revival Project. These were just mailboxes and offshore bank accounts. The documents showed the money flowing from New York to the Cayman Islands, then to Switzerland, and finally back into my family's personal, undeclared investment accounts. Wire fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, conspiracy. The names of the board members who signed off were all there. My father, my mother. And for the last 2 years, my brother, Julian. His signature was on the most recent transfers. He wasn't just an heir, He was a participant. I sat there in the glow of the monitor and felt a chilling clarity. This was their legacy. This was their integrity. Their entire empire, their perfect reputation was built on a foundation of sophisticated crime. They had destroyed my life and cast me aside for their own selfish pride. The question wasn't if I should use it. The only question was how. I wasn't going to just leak it anonymously. That wasn't enough. They had publicly humiliated me. Their downfall had to be just as public, a spectacle. They loved the spotlight. I decided I would give them one last unforgettable performance. Planning the takedown took 6 months. I was methodical, patient, clinical. The artist in me wanted a perfect composition. The betrayed daughter craved a reckoning. I needed to detonate this bomb right in the center of their world at the moment of their greatest triumph. That moment was the annual Harrison Foundation Gala, the social event of the season, a temple built to their own egos. This year was the 20th anniversary, the biggest yet. My father was giving the keynote, a speech I knew would be full of empty words about integrity and legacy. The perfect stage. First, reconnaissance. I used a fake name and volunteered for one of the catering companies. During a walkthrough of the grand ballroom, I mapped out the AV setup. It was all controlled from a small booth at the back of the room. It was professionally run, but every system has a weakness. I spent weeks researching the AV company. I found my opening not in a technical flaw, but a human one. A junior, a VTech. A young guy who was overworked, underpaid, and cynical about his wealthy clients. I created a fake online persona, struck up a conversation on a tech forum, and built a rapport. I learned he often worked events solo from the booth. I also learned he had a weakness for high-end tech. A week before the gala, an anonymous package arrived at his door. Inside was the latest, most expensive graphics card on the market. The note was simple: for your trouble, consider it a grant from the Urban Arts Revival Project. A gamble, but it paid off. I used their own fake charity against them. I knew he wouldn't report it. On the night I was set up in my apartment, my own command center. I had no desire to be anywhere near that building. I had prepared a video, my masterpiece. It was simple, brutal, and undeniable. I used their own documents to create a slideshow set to slow, somber, classical music. It would start with the Harrison Foundation logo, then dissolve into a scanned invoice from Harrison Holdings. An animated arrow would highlight the overcharge. The next slide, the corresponding donation to the foundation. Then, the transfer of funds to a shell corporation with the signature of my father, my mother, or my brother clearly visible. Finale was a world map, tracing the money from our city to offshore accounts. With the final tally in stark white numbers, over $50 million. The night of the gala came. My heart was pounding. I watched a live news feed of the red carpet. There they were. My father regal in his tuxedo. My mother draped in diamonds. Julian with his practiced, empty smile. Untouchable. I waited. Dinner, polite applause, and then the moment came. The lights dimmed. The MC introduced my father, a man whose name is synonymous with integrity and community, Mr. Richard Harrison. As my father walked to the podium, basking in the applause, I made my move. I'd already breached the event's Wi-Fi. I entered the AV system. I could see the live feed of my father and the prepared slideshow of smiling children queued up. The tech, distracted by a text I sent him, barely noticed as I killed his connection. And took control. My father began. Thank you. 20 years ago, my family and I had a simple vision. I hit play. On the giant screens behind him, the smiling children vanished. The Harrison Foundation logo appeared. Then it dissolved. The first invoice flashed up. My father, the pro, faltered. The audience murmured, thinking it was a glitch. He tried to recover, a vision of giving back. But the slides kept coming. The invoice, the donation record. Transfer authorization, signed by him. The room went dead silent. People started to read the documents on the screens. A gasp rippled through the front rows. My father stopped talking. He turned and stared, his face draining of all color as he saw his own signature. It's 10 feet high. The next slide showed my mother's signature. On the live feed, I saw her hand fly to her mouth, her perfect smile collapsing in horror. Then came Julian's. He looked like he'd been gut-punched. The slideshow continued for 3 agonizing minutes. The only sound was the somber classical music, an anthem for the funeral of their reputation. The final slide, the world map with a $50 million total, stayed on the screen. Then, for the finale, I activated the sound system. A pre-recorded voice filled the room, my voice digitally altered. Legacy, it said. Integrity, community, for 20 years. The Harrison family has used these words to build an empire of lies. This was their real legacy. Chaos. People jumping to their feet. The flash of cell phone cameras like strobes. The journalists in the room were already on their phones. My family stood frozen on the stage, exposed, humiliated, utterly destroyed. In front of the very people they'd spent their lives trying to impress. Miles away, I closed my laptop, took a deep breath, and for the first time in years, I let myself cry. But they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of release. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. The video, filmed by 100 smartphones, went viral before the gala was even over. By morning, Harrison Foundation was the #1 trending topic in the country. The story was everywhere. Their meticulously crafted facade wasn't just cracked. It was vaporized. The legal hammer came down fast. Spurred by the public outcry, the district attorney's office announced a formal investigation within 48 hours. The IRS and FBI weren't far behind. Their world imploded. The friends who flocked to their parties vanished. Board members resigned in a panic. The hospital wing and university library with our names started proceedings to have it removed. Harrison Holdings went into a death spiral. The courts froze their assets. The money, the power, the influence, all gone. A week after the gala, my phone rang. Unknown number, it was Julian. His voice was unrecognizable. The smooth charm gone, replaced by frantic desperation. Amelia? You did this. You did this to us. I didn't do anything, I said, my voice cold. I just showed everyone the truth. You did the rest. The truth, he shrieked. You've destroyed us. Dad is broken. Mom won't leave her room. The lawyers say we could go to prison. Prison, Amelia. You have to fix this. Tell them you made it up. They're not fake, Julian. Your signature is on them. I saw it. He paused, then his voice dropped to a pathetic whimper. I didn't really know. Dad just told me where to sign. It was a crime, I said flatly, and you were part of it. He started begging, then turned to threats. I listened to his pathetic, impotent rage and felt nothing. No fear, no pity. Just a vast, quiet emptiness. I hung up a few days later, a voicemail from my mother. Her voice was thick with manipulative tears. Amelia, darling, she began, I don't know why you're so angry. We've always loved you. We just wanted what was best. Your father, he might have a heart attack. How could you be so cruel? Same old story. Their love was conditional. Their concern was for themselves. They still didn't get it. In their minds, I was the villain. I deleted the voicemail. My father never called. His pride wouldn't allow it. The DA's office contacted me. I hired a lawyer and turned over the original hard drive. Because I had technically been allowed to view the files I copied. The evidence was admissible, testified before a grand jury, my identity shielded, though everyone knew who it had to be. 3 months after the gala, the indictments came down. My father, my mother, and my brother were all charged. The pictures of them, walking into the courthouse, faces gray and haggard, were a world away from the gala photos. The gods of our city had fallen. The legal battle dragged on for a year. Faced with undeniable evidence, they all took plea deals. My father, the mastermind, got several years in a federal white-collar prison. My mother and brother got a mix of house arrest, probation, and massive fines. The Harrison empire was officially dead. The foundation was dissolved. The money they stole was mostly gone, lost to offshore accounts or their lavish lifestyle. But their power to hurt people was gone forever. And me, get a reward. I never wanted one. My revenge wasn't about profit. It was about principle. After it was all over, a strange quiet settled over my life. The anger that had fueled me for years was gone. In its place was a hollow space. I thought destroying them would fix me, that it would heal the wound of their rejection. It didn't. Revenge is an empty thing. It doesn't give you back what you lost, but it did set me free. I finished my degree. My art, once so dark, started to change, started using color again. My work became lighter, more hopeful. I was no longer the tragic, exiled daughter. I was just Amelia, an artist. A survivor. I don't live a glamorous life. I have a small studio. In a city where no one knows the Harrison name, I teach art at a community college. I have friends who love me for me. My life is small, and it is quiet, and it is real. It is everything they taught me to despise. And it is beautiful. Do I regret it? Sometimes, late at night, I think of my father in a prison cell, or my mother trapped in a house that's now a cage. I feel a flicker of something, a ghost of the family bond that should have been. But then I remember the coldness in their eyes as they cast me out. I remember the years of loneliness. They made their choices. I made mine. I didn't start the war, but I finished it. My revenge didn't bring me joy, but it did bring me peace. It let me finally close the door on the house of Harrison and walk into the sunlight of my own life. They built a legacy of lies. I built a life of truth. And in the end, that's the only legacy that matters. So that's my story. It's complicated, and I know not everyone will agree with what I did. What do you think? Was I right to expose them like that? Or did I go too far and become as ruthless as they were? I've asked myself that question 1,000 times. Let me know your honest thoughts in the comments below. I've read them all. And I'm genuinely curious to hear what you would have done. And if you want to hear more stories about secrets, betrayals, and getting even, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Thanks for listening.